Growing up, I always knew Olivia was my parents' favorite. She was 3 years older than me. Blonde, outgoing, the kind of daughter everyone seemed to adore. I was the quiet one. I spent my afternoons with books and coding instead of cheer practice. My hair was always a little messy, and I never fit the picture my parents wanted to show the world. My father, Richard, owned a small but successful car dealership. My mother, Linda, had never worked. We weren't rich, but we lived comfortably. Comfortably enough to spoil one daughter while teaching the other to expect nothing. When Olivia turned 17, she got a brand new Honda Civic. When I turned 17, I got a bus pass and a lecture about responsibility. She went to a state university, joined a sorority, and my parents paid for everything. I worked 4 different jobs just to finish community college before transferring to a university 3 hours away. By then, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Still, I kept telling myself it would change someday. If I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, eventually they'd see my value. Looking back now, I was unbelievably naive. 4 years ago, Olivia got engaged to her fiancé, Ethan. He worked as a middle manager for a logistics company. The wedding planning started almost immediately. From that point on, every Sunday dinner at my parents' house became a 3-hour discussion about venues, flowers, guest lists, and dress fittings. I'd sit there quietly, pushing food around my plate while everyone acted like I wasn't even in the room. Then, one conversation changed everything. We were sitting around the dining table while Olivia talked to Mom and Dad about the wedding budget. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard the number. $90,000. My head snapped up so fast it almost hurt. Wait, what? I honestly thought I'd misheard. Dad didn't even look at me. We're giving your sister $90,000 for the wedding. It's what she deserves for finding such a good man. For a second, I couldn't breathe. $90,000. I'd survived on instant ramen, worked overnight shifts at a grocery store just to afford textbooks, graduated with $48,000 in student loans that I was still paying off. And my parents were casually handing Olivia enough money to buy a house. That's a lot of money, I managed to say. Olivia smiled. I know, right? We're thinking about booking Riverside Estate. It's going to be absolutely perfect. I looked at my parents. Something inside me refused to stay quiet anymore. I mean, if there's money available, I'm still paying off my student loans. Maybe you could help me with. No. Mom cut me off before I could even finish. You made your choices, Claire. You chose an expensive university instead of staying local. You chose computer science instead of something practical. I stared at her. Computer science isn't practical? Dad finally looked at me. The disappointment on his face wasn't new, but it still hurt every single time. Your sister is building a life. She's starting a family. She deserves our support. You're only thinking about yourself, like always. It felt like all the air had left my lungs. I'm thinking about myself? I worked 4 jobs while Olivia partied through college on your money. That's enough. Dad slammed his hand against the table. Your sister appreciates everything we've done for her. She's always been grateful. She's always been the daughter we could be proud of. I swallowed hard. And I'm not? The words came out broken. Years of rejection finally finding a voice. Mom sighed as though I was exhausting her. Claire, you don't deserve our help. You've never appreciated anything we've done for you. You've always been difficult. You've always kept your distance. Olivia actually wants us in her life. When was the last time you even called just to talk? I pushed my chair back. It scraped loudly across the hardwood floor. When was the last time you answered when I did call? No one said a word. Olivia looked uncomfortable for maybe half a second. Then she went right back to discussing the seating chart for her wedding. I picked up my purse, turned around, and walked out. As I reached my car, I heard Mom calling after me. You're being dramatic, Claire. Come back here and apologize. I never went back. I drove to my tiny apartment, sat down on my secondhand couch, and made the decision that changed the rest of my life. If I didn't deserve their support, fine. I didn't need it. I'd build my own life. The next morning, I blocked every one of their phone numbers, deleted them from every social media account, Facebook, Instagram, everything. My coworker, Hannah, thought I'd completely lost my mind. During lunch, she stared at me across the table. You're really cutting off your entire family? Over money? It's not about the money, I told her. It's about looking me in the eyes and telling me I wasn't worth helping. They funded Olivia's fairy tale while telling me I didn't deserve the same basic support. Hannah reached across the table and squeezed my hand, then proved them wrong. Show them exactly what you're worth. So that's what I did. The first few weeks were harder than I expected. More than once, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone because I wanted to call mom. Something stupid. A funny story from work. A recipe question. The little conversations daughters have with their mothers without even thinking about it. Then I'd remember, and I'd have to grieve all over again. The truth was, I didn't actually miss them. I missed the idea of having parents who cared. Those are two very different things. My apartment suddenly felt much quieter, much smaller. Every evening I'd walk through the front door and realize something that terrified me. For the first time in my entire life, I was completely alone. No safety net, no backup plan, no family to fall back on if everything collapsed. It was frightening, but strangely, it was also freeing. Around that time, I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Grace Kim. Hannah had recommended her. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. During my third session, I completely fell apart. I keep wondering if I'm overreacting. I cried into a tissue. Maybe I should just apologize. Maybe having a bad family is still better than having no family at all. Dr. Kim leaned forward. Claire, you didn't create this separation. You simply stopped accepting unacceptable treatment. Those are very different things. She waited for me to look at her. There's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Right now, you're alone because you chose to protect yourself. When you were with your family, you felt lonely anyway. That sentence hit me harder than anything else she'd said. She was right. I'd felt more invisible sitting at my parents' dinner table than I did sitting alone in my apartment. What happened to you was emotional abuse, she continued gently. Extreme favoritism. Constant comparison. Withholding support from one child while giving everything to the other. Those things leave psychological scars. You're not overreacting. You're protecting yourself. Over the next several months, therapy helped me unpack 28 years of damage. Patterns I'd never noticed before suddenly became obvious. Mom celebrated every tiny thing Olivia accomplished. My achievements barely received a nod. Dad's entire face lit up whenever Olivia walked into a room. When I came home, he often didn't even look up from his newspaper. Family photos suddenly looked different too. Olivia always stood in the center, smiling, perfect. I was usually pushed toward the edge, sometimes partly cut out altogether. One picture hit me especially hard. It had been taken at Olivia's 17th birthday party. She stood between Mom and Dad, all three of them smiling directly at the camera. I was barely visible at the side of the frame, almost cropped out completely. Dr. Kim studied the picture quietly. That must have been incredibly painful. I looked down at it. I honestly thought it was normal. I thought maybe there was something wrong with me, something that made me impossible to love. She shook her head. There was never anything wrong with you. There was something terribly wrong with the way you were treated. That realization changed everything. Instead of letting the pain destroy me, I started using it as fuel. Therapy gave me clarity. Clarity gave me focus, and I poured every ounce of that focus into my career. I'd already been working at a tech startup for 3 years as a junior software developer, but I wanted more, much more, long before all of this happened. Back in my final year of university, I'd built a software project for one of my classes. It was designed to help small and medium-sized businesses manage inventory using machine learning. The system predicted future demand based on hundreds of different variables. Less waste, better ordering, more accurate forecasting. After I presented it, my professor, Dr. David Reyes, stopped me before I left the classroom. Claire, this isn't just a class project. I think this could actually become a real business. At the time, I barely had enough energy to survive. I was working nights, going to school during the day, living on 4 hours of sleep. The idea stayed inside a forgotten folder on my laptop, like a seed waiting for the right season. Now, I finally had a reason to open it again, with my family's rejection still echoing in my head, and Dr. Kim constantly reminding me to put my energy into something productive. I opened that old project again. Every evening after work, every weekend, every spare hour, I kept building it. My tiny apartment slowly turned into mission control. I squeezed a workstation into my bedroom, used my tax refund to buy a second monitor. Some nights I worked until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped from typing. The original idea had been solid, but now I wanted it to become exceptional. I expanded the predictive analytics, added seasonal forecasting, integrated multiple point-of-sale systems, designed a dashboard simple enough that even someone with very little technical experience could understand it. Then I found 4 small businesses willing to test it. One of them was the neighborhood grocery store where I'd worked during college. About a month later, the owner, Mrs. Gomez, called me. "Claire, this thing you built is incredible. I haven't thrown away expired inventory in weeks. My ordering has never been this accurate. You should be selling this." Her words were exactly the validation I needed. While Olivia was probably enjoying the expensive wedding my parents paid for, I wouldn't know. I hadn't been invited. Instead, I was building something that belonged entirely to me. For months, I lived on coffee, takeout, and determination. Some days I worked 15 hours straight. Hannah started bringing dinner to my apartment after she realized I'd still be coding at midnight. "You're gonna burn yourself out," she warned one evening. I can't stop now. I never looked away from my screen. This is my chance. At work, my manager, Jason, noticed I was exhausted. One morning, after I nearly fell asleep during a meeting, he asked me to stay behind. "You look terrible." "What's going on?" At first, I almost lied. Then something made me tell him the truth. "I've been developing inventory management software on the side. I think it could become something big." His eyes immediately lit up. "Show me." 8 months after cutting off my family, I walked into our small conference room carrying my laptop. My hands were shaking while I connected it to the projector. I demonstrated every feature, every report, every prediction. I showed him the beta results, customer feedback, market research, competitor analysis. I'd prepared answers for every question I could imagine. Jason didn't interrupt once, he simply watched, completely expressionless. When I finally finished, he leaned back in his chair, took a slow breath, then smiled. "This is incredible, Claire. Genuinely incredible." My heart started pounding. "So, what do you think?" He leaned forward. "I think we shouldn't treat this as a side project. I think we build an entire product around it. And I think you shouldn't just be an employee anymore. You should become a partner." I honestly thought I'd misheard him. "What?" "You heard me. This isn't employee-level work. This is partnership-level innovation. We'll build it inside the company. You'll receive equity, profit sharing, a real ownership stake." Then his smile faded into something more serious. "But for now, keep this completely confidential. This is going to become our flagship product." I walked out of that conference room barely able to breathe. For the first time in my life, someone had looked at what I'd created and believed in me. My first instinct was to call someone, to tell them, to scream the news into the phone. Then reality hit. There wasn't anyone left to call. My parents were gone. Most of my childhood friends had always been closer to Olivia than to me. So I called Hannah. She came over that evening. The second I told her, she screamed loud enough for both of us. "You actually did it." She wrapped me in the biggest hug I'd had in years. "I knew you could." Over the next 3 months, our company transformed my software into a commercial product. Jason hired more developers to help scale it. But I remained the lead architect. I knew every line of code, every decision, every piece of logic behind it. We named it Inventory IQ. Our first major client was a sporting goods chain with 30 stores across the Midwest. Within the first quarter, they reported a 45% reduction in inventory waste. Then the testimonials started coming. Industry magazines wrote about us. Business journals featured us. Word spread faster than any of us expected. 8 months later, a national retail chain with more than 220 stores signed a contract worth $3.6 million. I sat in the conference room while Jason shook hands with their CEO. Then he turned toward me. "We just changed your life. You know that, right?" Within a year, everything changed. We expanded rapidly, built a sales department, hired customer support, added more developers. My title changed from junior developer to chief technology officer. My annual income jumped from $60,000 to more than $260,000. That didn't even include my equity or my share of the company's profits. Jason officially made me a full partner. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck anymore. The software kept growing. Retail stores, restaurants, warehouses, hospitals. Every new industry found another way to use Inventory IQ. The algorithm I'd written alone in my bedroom, fueled by coffee and heartbreak, was now processing millions of data points every single day. Eventually, Jason introduced me to a financial advisor named Lauren. After reviewing my accounts, she smiled. "Claire, do you actually realize how much money you're making?" I laughed nervously. "I know it's a lot." She closed the folder. "If this continues, you'll be a millionaire before the end of the fiscal year." The word sounded unreal. Millionaire. I'd spent years deciding whether I could afford groceries or gas. Now someone was talking about investment strategies, tax planning, and preserving wealth. It felt like learning an entirely different language. But Lauren taught me how to speak it. Lauren helped me build a long-term financial plan. Stocks, bonds, real estate, tax strategies, retirement accounts. Every dollar had a purpose. Money shouldn't just sit there, she told me. It should work for you. You've already earned it. Now let it keep earning. 3 years after the dinner where my parents told me I didn't deserve their help, my net worth crossed into 7 figures. The first thing I did was pay off my student loans. One payment, $48,000. Gone. I stared at the confirmation screen longer than I probably should have. For years, that debt had followed me everywhere. Now, it simply didn't exist anymore. I remembered studying during overnight grocery shifts, eating instant ramen because textbooks came first, wearing shoes with holes because buying new ones wasn't an option. Every sacrifice had led me here. By then, my investments were growing steadily. Lauren had helped me diversify everything carefully. Then I bought a house. Not just a house. The house, a custom-built contemporary home in Evergreen Heights. 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen, floor-to-ceiling windows, an infinity pool overlooking the city skyline. The purchase price was $5.5 million. I paid 35% in cash. Finding it had been an adventure all by itself. My realtor, Monica, specialized in luxury properties. When we first met, she looked politely skeptical. I was only 30, wearing jeans and a blazer, and asking to tour multi-million-dollar homes. "Have you already been pre-approved?" she asked professionally. I handed her a letter from my bank. She read the first page, then looked at me very differently. "I see. Well, let's find your home." Over the next 3 weeks, we toured 10 different properties, historic estates, modern mansions, architectural showpieces. They were all beautiful. None of them felt right. Until she took me to Evergreen Heights. The house was still under construction, about 70% complete. We walked through what would become the living room. I looked out through the massive wall of windows toward the skyline, and something inside me instantly knew. This was it. The lead architect, Michael Park, happened to be on site that day. "This is the centerpiece of the entire development," he explained. Floor-to-ceiling glass, smart home automation, geothermal heating and cooling. The infinity pool will appear to blend directly into the skyline. I listened carefully, then asked one question. "Can I change the layout?" Michael and Monica exchanged a quick glance. "It depends what you want to change. We're already fairly advanced in construction. I need a larger home office. A lot larger. Built-in bookshelves, multiple workstations, dedicated electrical systems, full soundproofing." Michael spread the blueprints across a temporary work table. After several minutes of calculations, he looked up. "It'll add about $280,000. And roughly 5 more months." I didn't hesitate. "Do it." For the first time, Monica looked at me with complete confidence. Construction continued over the next several months. Almost every week I visited the site, I watched my vision slowly become real. The oversized office, the expanded primary bathroom, the kitchen I'd always dreamed about. I personally selected every finish, every cabinet, every light fixture, every paint color. Michael introduced me to the interior designer, Isabel. She had incredible taste, but she never tried to force her own style onto me. Whenever I hesitated, she'd smile. "This is your house. It should reflect who you are." Who was I? It was a question I'd never really been allowed to answer before. For the first time, no one else's expectations mattered. I chose warm grays, deep blues, natural materials, furniture that felt comfortable instead of simply expensive. Artwork I actually connected with, not pieces chosen to impress strangers. Months later, Michael handed me the keys himself. "It's been an honor working with you. This house is truly special." After he left, I stood alone in the empty living room. Sunlight poured through the enormous windows, the city stretched out beneath me, and I cried. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in my entire life, I'd built something that no one could ever take away from me. Moving in felt surreal. Professional movers carefully unpacked everything I owned. My old secondhand couch, the garage sale dining table, cheap furniture I dragged from apartment to apartment for years. It all looked strangely out of place inside a $5 million home. Hannah laughed when she saw it. "We seriously need to buy you furniture." So we did. I asked Isabel for help, and for the first time in my life, I stopped looking at price tags. The leather sectional I'd always wanted, ordered, a dining table that seated 12 people, perfect, a bed that cost more than my first car. Why not? Even so, I stayed careful. Dr. Grace Kim's voice stayed with me. Wealth can heal certain wounds, but if you're not careful, it can create entirely new ones. Don't let success become your identity the same way rejection once was. I never forgot that. I replaced my old Honda Accord with a newer one, but I still drove a normal car. I still bought groceries at ordinary stores. I still met Hannah every week for lunch at the same casual restaurants we'd always loved. The mansion represented what I'd accomplished. It wasn't who I was. 3 months after moving in, I flew to Seattle to speak at a technology conference about innovation in inventory management. Standing on that stage still felt unreal. After my presentation ended, a man approached me during the networking reception. That was an excellent talk. He held out his hand. I'm Daniel Cooper. I work at Dataflow Systems? I smiled. Claire Harris. Nice to meet you. He was tall, kind-eyed, and his smile felt completely genuine. We stood there talking for nearly an hour. Software, books, travel, even joking about how terrible the conference coffee tasted. Eventually he smiled. Can I buy you dinner? Somewhere with better coffee? I hesitated. Dating had never been easy for me. Most of my relationships during college had been brief. Between work, school, and everything I'd carried emotionally, I never really let anyone get close. Opening your heart meant risking rejection. I'd already had enough of that to last a lifetime. But something about Daniel felt safe. Sure, I said. I'd like that. Dinner turned into a long walk through downtown Seattle. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our careers, books we loved, dreams we still hadn't accomplished. When I mentioned that I no longer had a relationship with my family, he didn't look uncomfortable. He didn't ask invasive questions. He simply nodded. My parents divorced when I was a kid, he said. My dad never really stayed involved after that. I get complicated families. That was all. No judgment, no pity, just understanding. By the end of the conference, we'd spent almost every free minute together. The distance wasn't ideal. He lived in Portland. I lived several states away. But somehow, we made it work. Video calls, weekend flights, constant messages throughout the day. He celebrated every success I had, asked questions about my work, actually listened when I talked about software. And for the first time in my life, I never felt like I was either too much or not enough. 7 months later, I invited him to visit my house. I was nervous, not because I was embarrassed, because I worried he'd think I was trying to impress him, or that the difference in our finances might make things awkward. I picked him up from the airport. As we drove through the city, the neighborhoods gradually became more expensive. Daniel looked out the window. So, where exactly do you live? I smiled. You'll see. We reached the gates of Evergreen Heights. The security gate opened. I drove up the long driveway. When Daniel saw the house, he just stared. Claire? Is this yours? Yeah. He climbed out of the car slowly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern architecture, the view stretching across the skyline. Inside, he walked through every room in complete silence. I held my breath. Part of me still expected someone to react the way my parents always had, with jealousy, suspicion, or criticism. Instead, he stopped in the middle of the living room, turned toward me, and smiled. This is incredible. You built this life yourself. I nodded. I did. He stepped closer, wrapped his arms around me, and quietly said 4 words. I'm proud of you. My throat closed instantly. 28 years. My parents had never once said those words to me. Not after graduating, not after getting my degree, not after building a company, not after becoming a millionaire. Yet this man, who had known me for only 7 months, said them like they were the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time, I believed them. I never told anyone from my old life where I lived. Why would I? They'd made it perfectly clear years earlier that I was on my own. Hannah helped me settle into the house. Daniel visited whenever he could. Life was peaceful, better than peaceful. I loved my work. I loved the people around me. The emptiness my family had left behind had finally healed. There was still a scar, but the wound itself was gone. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything changed. I was working in my home office during a video meeting with a client when the doorbell rang. I ignored it. The house had a smart security system. I could always check the footage later. A minute later, my phone started vibrating. Unknown number. Then another. Then another. After the meeting ended, I opened the security app. The moment I saw the recording, my stomach dropped, Olivia. She was standing outside my front gate. She stared at the house with her mouth hanging open, pressed the intercom several times, walked along the fence trying to peek inside, even held her phone over the gate to take pictures. Then I listened to the voicemails. The first one was almost confused. Hi, Claire. It's Olivia. I was driving through Evergreen Heights with some friends, and I saw your name on the mailbox. This can't be right. Call me. The second message sounded very different. What the hell, Claire? How do you own a house there? Those homes cost millions. Call me back right now. The third voicemail came from my mother. Her voice was already shaking. Claire Marie, your sister just called me crying. She says you live in a mansion. She keeps asking, why does she have that? You need to explain what's going on. I listened to 9 voicemails, each one more demanding than the last. The 6th came from my father. His voice sounded confused, then irritated. Claire, this is your father. We need to talk. This concerns the family. Call me back. I deleted every voicemail without responding. The calls didn't stop. Over the next week, more than 50 calls came from different numbers. Olivia had apparently recruited the entire family. My Aunt Karen, my Uncle Greg, even my grandmother. Some messages sounded worried. Others congratulated me. A few accused me of abandoning everyone. One voicemail from my grandmother stood out. Sweetheart, your mother is devastated. She doesn't understand why you kept your success a secret. She feels betrayed. Please call her. Betrayed. I almost laughed. They'd spent my entire life treating me like I mattered less. But now, because I had something they wanted, I was the one betraying them. Hannah came over that evening with a bottle of wine after I told her what had happened. So, what are you going to do? Nothing. I poured us both oversized glasses. I'm going to do exactly what they taught me to do. I'm going to live my life without them. Hannah looked at me carefully. They're not going to stop. She was right. The phone calls continued. Then the letters started. Because I'd filed a forwarding address after moving, they eventually found it. One afternoon, I opened an envelope. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. My hands were already shaking before I unfolded the letter. Open quote, Claire, I honestly don't understand why you're doing this. We are your family. Yes, we disagreed 3 years ago, but this has gone too far. Your sister is heartbroken that you're living in luxury while she and Ethan are struggling in their starter home. Your father's dealership hasn't been doing well lately, and we could really use your help. Surely, after everything you've accomplished, you can share some of your blessings with the people who raised you. We all make mistakes. Family forgives. It's time to come home. Olivia is pregnant now, and she wants her baby to know its aunt. Love, Mom, close quote. I read the letter 3 separate times. Every time, I noticed another layer of manipulation. They wanted me back. Now that I had money, Olivia's financial problems, Dad's struggling business, a pregnancy. Every sentence had been carefully designed to pull me back in. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started writing. The first draft was too angry, the second sounded defensive, the third tried to explain too much. After rewriting it over and over, I finally found the words I'd been searching for. Open quote, Linda. You're right about one thing. 3 years ago, we disagreed. You told me I didn't deserve help. You told me I wasn't the daughter you could be proud of. You gave Olivia $90,000 while making it very clear that I was worth nothing to this family. So I listened. I built a life where I don't need your approval, your support, or your money. Everything I have today was earned through my own work. You say you feel cheated because I never shared my success with you. I didn't keep secrets. We simply no longer have a relationship. You are not entitled to updates about my life, my finances, or my happiness. Olivia's child will grow up surrounded by family. I won't be part of that family, just as I was never truly part of the one you created. Please don't contact me again. Claire, close quote. I mailed the letter by certified mail. I wanted confirmation that she'd received it. 2 days later, the delivery receipt came back. An hour after that, my phone rang. Dad, I let it go to voicemail. When I played the message, his voice was shaking with rage. How dare you? How dare you reject everything we've done for you? We put a roof over your head. We fed you. And this is how you repay us. You're selfish, ungrateful. You don't deserve a single bit of success you've had. Mark my words, Claire. One day you're going to fall. And when that happens, don't you dare come crawling back to us. I saved the voicemail, not because I wanted to hear it again, because it reminded me exactly why I'd walked away. That evening, Daniel found me sitting alone in the home theater. I wasn't watching anything, just staring at a blank screen. He sat beside me. Are you okay? I gave a quiet laugh. They called me selfish? After everything? I'm the selfish one. He slipped an arm around my shoulders. I don't think they're angry. I looked at him. I think they're scared. They can't control you anymore. They can't use guilt. They can't use money. They can't use approval. You're successful without them. And that destroys the story they've been telling themselves all these years. He was right. Their entire version of our family depended on one idea. Olivia was the successful daughter, the one worth investing in. I was the disappointment, the child who would never become anything. My life had destroyed that narrative. 2 days ago, Hannah called me sounding worried. You need to see something. A screenshot appeared on my phone. Olivia had made a public Facebook post. Apparently, she'd forgotten to change the privacy settings before posting it. It read, open quote, some people forget where they came from. My sister has millions while her family is struggling. She refuses to answer our calls. Money changes people. I hope she remembers what family means before it's too late. Close quote. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Some people supported Olivia. Others asked questions. Several wrote, there must be another side to this story. Then I saw my mother's comment underneath. Open quote, we gave her everything growing up. This is how she repays us. Some children simply don't have gratitude. Close quote, everything. I stared at that word for a long time. Apparently, a bus pass instead of a car. Student loans instead of tuition. Being told I wasn't good enough. Counted as everything. I'd had enough of staying silent. Enough of letting them tell the story while I kept mine to myself. So I opened Facebook, created a brand new account using my full name, and made exactly one public post. I wrote, open quote, I've been asked by several people why I no longer speak to my family. Here's the truth. 3 years ago, my parents gave my sister $90,000 for her wedding. When I asked whether they could help with my student loans I only had because, unlike my sister, I received no financial help for college, I was told I didn't deserve it. My father said I had always been the disappointing child. My mother said I had never appreciated anything they'd done for me. So I took them at their word. I stopped asking for help. I built a career in technology. I developed software that's now used by hundreds of businesses. I earned everything I own. I didn't hide my success out of spite. I simply no longer have relationships with people who made it clear I wasn't worthy of their love or support. They now want to come back into my life because I've become successful. They believe they're entitled to my money, my time, and my forgiveness. Here's what I've learned. You don't get to decide someone isn't family and then expect to share in everything they build afterward. You don't skip the investment and demand the return. To everyone telling me I should forgive because they're my parents, they had nearly 30 years to treat me like family. They chose not to. I'm simply respecting the boundaries they created. Today I'm happy, I'm successful, and I'm surrounded by people who loved me long before I had money. That's enough for me. Close quote. I clicked post, closed my laptop, and waited. Whatever happened next, at least the truth was finally out. 8 hours later, the post had already been shared more than 2,000 times. By the next morning, over 12,000. People found Olivia's original post. Then they started asking questions. Why hadn't she mentioned the $90,000? Why hadn't she mentioned telling her sister she didn't deserve help? Why had that part been left out? Then my phone rang again, a number I hadn't blocked. This time, I answered, "How could you?" Mom's voice cracked before I even had a chance to speak. "How could you make our private family business public? Do you have any idea how humiliated we are? Your father's customers have seen it. Olivia's friends have seen it. You made us look like monsters." I stayed calm. "I didn't make you look like anything. I gave people context. We never said those things," she snapped. "You're twisting everything." "No, Linda," I spoke quietly. "I'm quoting you. You want to know what humiliation feels like? It's sitting at your parents' table while they tell you you're not worth helping. That's humiliation." For several seconds, all I heard was her crying. Finally, she whispered, "We made mistakes, but you're still our daughter." I closed my eyes. There was a time when that meant everything to me. It doesn't anymore. You taught me that love in this family had conditions. You only loved the daughter you were proud of. I stopped trying to become her. I became someone I could be proud of instead. "Claire, please." "Goodbye, Linda." I ended the call, blocked the number, and never heard her voice again. Daniel was making dinner when I walked into the kitchen. One look at my face, and he knew. "How are you feeling?" I actually stopped to think about it. For the first time in years, I answered honestly, "Free." The attention around the Facebook post slowly faded over the following weeks. My family stopped contacting me. According to Hannah, several mutual acquaintances had confronted them after learning the full story. One thing I discovered later surprised me. My father's dealership hadn't been struggling at all. That entire part of Mom's letter had been a lie. Another attempt to guilt me into sending money. A few months later, my grandmother somehow found my office address. She mailed me a birth announcement. Olivia had given birth to a little girl named Ella. I looked at the photo for a few seconds. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. Just nothing. Somewhere out there, I had a niece I'd probably never meet. I quietly fed the announcement into my paper shredder, then went back to work. Last week, Daniel proposed. We'd gone away for a quiet weekend by the ocean. He asked me to marry him. I said yes before he'd even finished the question. We're planning a small wedding. Only close friends. The family we've chosen for ourselves. Hannah will be my maid of honor. Daniel's parents, who have shown me more kindness in 3 years than my own parents did in nearly 3 decades, will be there too. We'll pay for every part of it ourselves. Not because we have to, because we want to. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what might have happened if my parents had simply said yes that day. If they'd helped me even a little. Would I have pushed myself this hard? Would I have built the life I have now? I'll never know, but I do know one thing. Their rejection became the greatest gift they ever gave me. It forced me to bet everything on myself. And this time, I won. That $6 million house isn't just a house. It's proof that I was always worth more than they ever believed. Every room, every window, every decision inside it. Reminds me of the woman I became the moment I stopped chasing their approval. When Olivia drove past my house, she called our mother crying, "Why does she have all of this?" The answer was simple. Because they gave me nothing. Their rejection became my motivation. Their doubt became my fuel. Their absence forced me to build a life they could never have imagined. I don't hate them anymore. Hate still requires emotional investment. I've moved beyond that. They're simply people who made their choices. And I made mine. The night before last, Hannah asked me something. Do you ever regret cutting them off? I looked around my home office, at the life I'd built, at Daniel planning our wedding in the next room, at a career I genuinely loved. Then I smiled. No, I don't think I ever will. Some people spend their entire lives trying to prove themselves to relatives who will never see their worth. I spent 3 years proving it to myself. That made all the difference. Every evening, the lights of the city shimmer below my infinity pool. And every time I look out across that skyline, I remember the young woman sitting at her parents' dinner table, being told she didn't deserve help. In one way, they were right. I didn't deserve what they were willing to give me. I deserved far more. And I found it on my own.